this event, as well as the many other volunteers and sponsors for your generous support of this ministry. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we begin. Refreshments and a time of fellowship will be made available at the conclusion of this event. If you need to use the restrooms, they are located behind the building to your right, down this path of beautiful blue flowers. If you feel moved by the Spirit during your time of worship, please feel free to stand or kneel or move to the sides or around the garden area if you feel moved to praise God, whichever way you feel comfortable. Before we begin, I'd like to share a little bit of testimony about how Journey to Renewal Ministries has impacted my life personally. When I first had met Andrea, we were attending a church Bible study together. We had been attending this church for several years already. And Andrea had let us know she felt called to begin this renewal ministry. She felt called away from the church to begin another ministry. And so I reached out to her through an email, and I let her know I felt touched by all the wisdom that she had to share during our Bible studies. And I knew I would really greatly miss her attendance there. And so Andrea reached back out. She didn't have to, but she felt led to. And she reached back out in an email and she said, "I'd like to invite you to come and join me for lunch, just a simple brunch one day." And little did she know everything that I was going through at that time. I'm sorry, I'm going to lose it. I always need tissue when I share my story because she's impacted my life so greatly. I've been so blessed. She didn't know that the years before I met her, filled with loss, filled with infertility, multiple miscarriages. She didn't know that we had suffered loss in our family, that we had lost grandparents and a mother in a very short amount of time. She didn't know that we had a foster daughter that we had raised for nearly 2 years, and we had to say goodbye to her. She was returned to her neglectful, abusive family. She didn't know that my husband lost his job. And all of this happened within a period of about 6 months. So it was extreme loss and tearing away. And I felt like I had blow after blow after blow. But I kept coming to this Bible study. I kept coming, hoping, praying for something. And I had a spirit of death around me, both literal and figurative death, with all of the losses. And I had gotten so low to the point where I didn't think that I wanted to go on. I wanted to give up. I felt like I had the weight of the world on my shoulders, having to support my entire family, having to support my husband in his times of loss, my children. And I felt like I had all the weight on myself, on my shoulders. So here's Andrea with a simple invitation. Would you like to join me for lunch? And that day, I had been considering all the various ways that I might end my life, which she did not know. And the first thing she said was, "I feel like God's calling me to start a women's revival ministry. Would you like that? Would you like revival in your life? Would you like to feel alive in the Lord again?" And she sent out a life raft that she had no idea that I needed right at that moment. So Andrea, I know she has impacted my life immensely and brought renewal, rejuvenation, and revival in myself and in my family and in countless other women that I've seen her work in their lives that God's used her to bring revival to them as well. And I'd like to read a scripture verse that became the scripture verse for my life, and I believe a very strong scripture for this ministry as well. And it was from Isaiah 61, verse 1. The Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is on me, because the Lord has anointed me to preach good news to the poor. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim freedom for the captives, release from darkness for the prisoners. And that's what I was. I was a prisoner, trapped in darkness. To proclaim the year of the Lord's favor and the day of vengeance of our God, to comfort all who mourn and provide for those who grieve in Zion, to bestow on them a crown of beauty instead of ashes, the oil of gladness instead of mourning, and a garment of praise instead of a spirit of despair. They will be called oaks of righteousness, a planting of the Lord for the display of his splendor. My family will be called oaks of righteousness. They will rebuild the ancient ruins and restore the places long devastated. They will renew the ruined cities that have been devastated for generations.